This is iDesign Lab, a podcast where creativity and curiosity meet style and design. Curator of interiors, furnishings, and lifestyles. Hosted by Tiffany Woolley, an interior designer and a style enthusiast, along with her serial entrepreneur husband, Scott. iDesign Lab is your ultimate design podcast, where we explore the rich and vibrant world of design and its constant evolution in style and trends. iDesign Lab provides industry insight, discussing the latest trends, styles, and everything in between to better help you style your life through advice from trendsetters, designers, influencers, innovators, fabricators, and manufacturers, as well as personal stories that inspire, motivate, and excite. And join us on this elevated, informative, and lively journey into the world of all things design. On today's episode of the iDesign Lab, we welcome the incredible Hale Shoa, founder and CEO of Picturely, where photo chaos meets storytelling magic. From luxury branding to preserving family legacies, Hale's mission is powerful: to rescue your memories and turn them into timeless, searchable digital archives. You don't want to miss this.
Welcome to the iDesign Lab podcast. Today we have a very special guest, Hale Shoa, who is the founder and creator of a very exciting company called Picturely. So welcome, Hale, and please introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you so much for having me. I am Hale Shoa, and as you mentioned, I'm the CEO and founder of Picturely. It's a photo organization and curation and design studio based in Los Angeles.
It's a very interesting company. Tell us a little about the company and what the company does and how it helps people.
So this was my little passion project back in 2015. I was working with a life coach while I had a very big girl job in advertising. I was the global operations director for Jaguar Land Rover in 2016. And I just really wanted to do my own business. And she kept asking me, like, what do you love doing? And really what it kept boiling down to was family memories and making things with it. So I am very passionate about designing beautiful photo keepsakes, like photo books and gallery walls. And then she kept saying, okay, well, let's figure out how to make a business out of it. And I kept thinking, who's going to pay me to do photo books?
That's so funny.
5 employees later.
Yeah.
But you're doing more than just photo books. You're doing photo walls for people's homes and the collages and so forth.
Yeah.
You're doing archival for people.
Yeah, that's actually most of our business is that. So first client, I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
My first client out the gate who wanted to do a photo book, I went to her house to sort of assess what she has. And she took me into her dining room, which her dining room was about, I want to say it was about 24 feet long. It was very large. She had a very big house in Los Angeles. And it had about 3 feet deep of photos. And then there were adjoining little tables around the dining room, which also had 3 feet deep. Full. And she said, yes, I'd like to do a photo book, but what about all this?
Right.
And I thought, I need to dig into archiving and learn how to do that. So I became a certified photo organizer. So I am very knowledgeable in how to approach I specialize in large collections. We just happen to get a lot of large collections of people saying, I have so many photo books and scrapbooks from 1800s all the way to 1940s. I have so many things on tape from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. I just don't even know how to approach this. I don't even know what to do with all this. So it's really important to be able to organize a collection in a way that the family can access it in a way that's searchable and sortable. And so that's our expertise in order to be able to provide an archive to them.
So a person who has photos, videos, film, that they've had since they're a kid or their grandparents or their parents gave them, you're able to take all of that and basically digitize it? catalog it?
Like digital cataloging, I guess?
Exactly. Yeah. So we organize everything chronologically.
I was just going to ask
And-
you, is it date or?
Exactly. There's so many clues in photos. The photos themselves, with the deckled edges being from the 30s all the way to the early 50s. And then the square photos are from the sort of mid to late 50s to the early 70s. So photos themselves have a lot of clues in them as to when they're from. And of course, we start every project with a family tree so that we can see, when the grandmother was born, when they got married, when when they passed, because we always come across photos that are wrongly dated, whether the camera had a wrong date on it, and so the stamp on the photo is incorrect.
I remember those days when you didn't update that.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of people are like, I just bought a new camera. It's like they forget to,
Set the
update
date.
it.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So, and that's why, if we come across a photo that has grandpa in it that's dated 1998 on the stamp on the photo, but grandpa died in 1993, we know that that's, in fact, it gives us a clue on how to do other photos that came from that camera.
So much research really with the family itself is involved in this process.
You would think I've become so good at in terms of how to interview a client,
right?
That we spend 2 to 4 hours with a client, and
Wow.
that's really all a client can handle. Going through memories unless it's like a very large archive, and by large I mean like 300,000 or more. Then, but even then, it's just understanding what the cadence was. We have a lot of clients who are high profile, whether it's in the world of business or fashion or otherwise. So our approach to those types of clients is a little different because now we're getting into their business acumen and understanding their accomplishments and what the timeline of that would be.
It's really so necessary. There's really everybody who could benefit from a tool like this. So when you spend that initial 3, hours or less with the client, is this something that people can access for the foreseeable future and add to?
Well, yeah, the 3 to 4 hour initial thing is for me to understand their goals and also just kind of skim through some of their albums and some of their memories to sort of assess the way we would curate. So I highly recommend every catalog to be curated. There's no reason for us to keep and scan photos that, let's say you went to the zoo in the 90s and you took a bunch of images of the animals. And those were amazing in the 90s because then you'd make a little photo book and then you'd be like, then that's the elephant and that's the giraffe and the kids would love it. But, your great grandkids are going to be like, why is there a photo of an elephant? Like, is there a significance? Did they own this elephant?
It's so true. The editing process.
Yes. So my main goal is to make sure I understand how they would want us to edit it for them. I have an amazing team of organizers and curators that, we've all worked together to really understand what to keep and what not to keep. And so we curate every collection. And in that 3 to 4 hours is when I'm sort of assessing, do they want to keep more or less? And some families want to keep everything. A lot of times the ones who have suffered an untimely death, whether it's of a spouse or if it's of a parent and they're still grieving, that tends to lean into really wanting to keep everything.
So it seems like it's a very timely process. You mentioned a few moments ago you have clients of 300,000 images. That's an enormous amount of images to go through and to cull through and then to figure out which ones you're going to keep and which ones you're not for the client.
Yeah, that client had an enormous amount of accomplishments. They're a very prominent family in Los Angeles. They were extremely political, so they had a lot of fundraisers, you know how like when
Right, events.
dignitaries and politicians visit certain cities, there's always certain families who hold that, you know, the fundraising dinners and whatnot. They were part of that sphere. So there was a lot of figuring out what the data of so-and-so visiting is, and which was fun, you know, because you get to see a lot of, you know, again, like kings and queens and dignitaries and politicians visiting their home. It was really cool and interesting, but you know, it's like, what is the saying? How do you eat an elephant one chunk at a time?
Right.
So when you have a new client that comes in and they're bringing you, or you're going and picking up after you're meeting with them, all of this, you know, photography and film and video and so forth, is most of it like organized, or that people are giving it to you, or is it, you know, like in shoe boxes that
Probably.
you're, you know, you're dealing with I hate to say, a mess to start with to organize it?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you asking them to possibly organize it a little beforehand?
No, I would prefer for them not to, actually.
Really?
And I'll tell you why. It's always a hybrid. Every family or institution has had some semblance of organization with their paperwork, their accomplishments, their files, their photos. We always start the organization process always starts with albums. And that is because there was some semblance of a reason why certain photos or memories were in that album. Whether it is of a travel or of, you know, the first year of a kid, or just a year's worth of their photos for the family. So we always start with albums so we can understand their cadence, and we can sort of put the timeline. It's much easier for us to put the timeline. If a family goes into organize it themselves, what ends up happening is that they will take things out of albums that could have helped us with the clues.
Right,
and now it's going to take us a lot longer to be able to figure that out, whereas we can easily figure that out by going through an album. And yeah, and every family has a shoebox of loose photos, and often that is either photos that are the most precious because they went, let's say there was a celebration of sorts, whether
Right,
someone's
they went
getting
through them
married or
already.
someone passed, you know, they go through the albums and take out the best of, and then it's never going to go back in the albums again.
True.
So those photos are either the duds and duplicates that they
Yep.
didn't put in albums, or they were the best of that they took out of albums to make something with it.
So it's funny because as you're saying all those, you know, the loose pictures and taking them out for certain events or what have you, I mean, that's almost what I would say most people do, even myself in my business, when you're kind of helping people through a move and taking photos to display, you know, within, you know, cabinetry designs and millwork, what have you. It's always like a random grouping. So it's funny, like, what does that look like initially? So for these people, like, I understand, like, the timeline, I guess, is where I'm going. Like, so initially they're going to handle this over to you, kind of let go of the process, trust the expert, if you will. What does that timeline look like for them?
We can, we've gotten to a point where we can finish a fairly large collection. We consider a large collection anything over 20,000 assets within a month.
Wow.
So
That's a lot of
is
content
amazing.
to go through.
Yeah.
And do you
absolutely.
scan everything? How does that work?
We curate everything, meaning
Okay.
we go through every single item that we've picked up, including
Okay.
receipts. Because sometimes receipts could have, there's a reason why someone saved a receipt. It could be just an oversight. But sometimes it's a handwritten note that, you know, we keep, we try not to throw anything out. Even when we're deputized, I have clients who are like, you can throw out my slides when you're done scanning them. And I'm fine
Forgot
with
about
them
those.
throwing it out. In fact, I encourage people to throw out their duplicates and duds and things like that. I don't feel comfortable throwing anything out in the studio because you could have a change of heart. I don't know.
Right.
And but so to answer your initial question, we do go through everything, but we do not recommend or scan everything. It's just, you don't want, you went to Hawaii and, the sky and the water look beautiful, but why do we have to scan that,
That makes sense. It really does. And I feel like you need somebody like yourself to actually explain it. It's kind of like when a client hires us to do interior design for a residence. I mean, they definitely need, I always say you can love a lot of furniture, but doesn't mean it's all going to work in your house. Like you can appreciate things from a distance.
Exactly. And, it's much harder to curate your own collection
For
than it is
sure.
to curate someone else's.
For sure.
My husband and I went to Mexico and Cuba in 2015. And when I came back, I had his phone, my phone, and a camera. And I was so overwhelmed. I thought, okay, I don't know. I like all these photos.
I know.
And so I gave it to my employees. I'm like, you know what? You can curate this for me because
That's
what they do.
amazing. So then what did they do? Put some in albums for you, print some that go on the wall type of detail so you have that memory?
They just curated it for me. They took out, they basically 5-starred what they thought was the great photos.
A highlight reel.
Yeah. We do a lot of digital organization as well, where we take things from Dropbox, iCloud, various sources. And
Those photo
drives,
sharing sites.
Exactly, the shared drives. And we consolidate the digital libraries, take out the duplicates, and then we curate. So when I was done taking out the duds and duplicates for my library, I gave it to them to curate it.
Wow.
We love your business model and we love what you're doing with, how you're helping families and helping people, archiving their memories. For us, we're very close to the concept because it's got to be 17 or 18 years ago. We kind of created a similar concept to what you have. It was really based off of that because I had a very large production company. And I actually had 2 friends who came to me, both professional athletes, Dan Marino and Alonzo Mourning. They came to me almost at the same time. Dan came to me, past NFL football quarterback, and said that he had all of the video since he was a young boy in elementary school playing football. And his father had kept every single video that he had shot of him as a boy in every single game he ever played, elementary, junior, high school, college. And he came to me and said, hey, can we digitize all this? Because it's all on all these tapes. And it took us, I forget, a number of months to do it. And while we were doing that, his wife, Claire, came to me and said, I have all these photos in the house. Can you digitize them? I said, sure. She showed up with 2 of her sons in 2 cars. And they had taken all the pictures off the walls with the frames and must have been 200 pictures in frames. And I looked at it going, oh my God, what am I doing with all this? But this is what you're doing for families.
Yeah.
We did the same similar thing for Alonzo Mourning. We turned it into a business like what you have, but we kind of went away from it because of other interests and other things we were doing. And I haven't really seen any company that's doing what you're doing. We talked earlier about the fact that, just the natural disasters and things that are happening in this country and around the world, it's very sad. Like, we've had a few friends who lost their houses in Los Angeles.
Well, and they lose everything from like the things that their kids created at school, like little mementos that.
Right. And your business, it's like everyone should know about it because everyone should be utilizing your business to save their memories, to put them in, you could put it in the cloud, you could put it on a thumb drive or a small little drive that you could put in a safe deposit box just so you have it.
Yeah.
But you're taking people's photography and so forth, which is another.
That's what I was going to say. Let's talk about the design side of it. Like once you've organized and that's all completed, what is your approach for designing the gallery wall, photo books?
But let's explain that
each individually.
Let's explain that so our listening audience understands. Tell us what you're also doing for people in their homes.
Yeah, in their homes, a lot of times they, the low-hanging fruit is, I want to be able to watch this on my television,
Yep.
which, of course, then we can help them set that up or provide a digital frame
Yep.
There are companies who make digital frames. There's pros and cons with all of them, and we've worked with pretty much all the big digital frame companies. And that's always really fun, and I have our memories sort of playing in the background on the TV, and I just never know what year is going to come up.
Right.
And it's just so
We
fun
do
to
we
be
do
able
the
to
same.
do
We
that.
do the same thing in our house. When the screensaver, I'll say, goes
true,
on
we
for,
do.
I think we use YouTube TV or I forget which one we use. Fire Stick,
Yeah.
And
I mean, they all, it
and our
depends on what
pictures come
system
up.
you're- Yeah, exactly. And so it's just so fun. But, gallery walls, as we've mentioned, I think gallery walls are great, but I do think gallery walls need to be refreshed.
Yes.
I think that with anything with design, I mean, obviously not art, but even with art, sometimes you just don't see it after a while,
true.
which I always think like it's nice to do a refresh of art and the way that things are placed in a
Very
home
true.
every 2 years, maybe.
Museums do that. They move things around. It's a very, typical thing to do. It's like good to remind people of that.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, design is very energetic.
You're right.
I feel
You're
like,
absolutely
and I'm
right.
sure you can agree with this, that, there's a ping that hits us when we meet a client or, when I'm designing a photo book, it's always a photo that they would never choose. Like when I am doing a wedding book, I often say, just give me everything because they're just going to give me the most obvious photos.
Right.
The portrait shots where everyone's looking into the camera. Well,
Right.
I like the shots when they're not looking into the
They're
camera.
more
I like the blurry
candid.
shots.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like the shots with movement. But
And most of those are more memorable and more fun to look at as well.
yeah, I mean, exactly.
Well, and repositioning things breathes new life into them as well. It's just kind of,
it changes the energy.
it changes the energy, exactly like you said. I love that.
And so my goal so it's not even a goal, it's really my intention when I'm designing something for a client is to make sure, obviously, to bring joy, as
Yes.
I'm sure you do as well, is to bring joy and just like a sense of awe. Like, oh, I didn't even think about this. I designed a gallery wall for a client who just celebrated her 90th birthday. And this was a present. The installation was a present for her. She had no idea that she was on vacation when we went in the house and installed everything. It was a very, very large, in her previous home where she lived for about 60 years.
Wow.
She had
Wow.
this gallery wall that her husband had put up in the 70s of all their travels. And let me tell you, this woman who was a Coco Chanel model,
Wow.
blonde,
Wow.
beautiful, and her husband was very successful businessman, and yet they went to like places like Borneo for a month and backpacked where they didn't shower for a month.
Unbelievable.
I mean,
Unbelievable.
I get chills talking about Joni. I love Joni.
Aw.
And
so special.
they went to just back places where they were hanging out with the Aboriginals, and just really deep into the Amazon, like
Becoming
incredible,
one.
incredible off the beaten track journey. So I was so inspired by this wall because in another room they had an entire room of masks, and I thought, okay, do you just want me to scan these 404 pictures that have been so degraded in color because they were not in archival, whatever. They were
That's
just in
another
this
conversation.
terrible frames. And she goes, well, what do you have in mind? And I said, well, since you're moving, why don't we do a gallery wall of these photos and we'll mix it with the masks. And let me tell you, I go there at least twice a year because we are continuing small little projects here and there. And every time I walk in, I'm like, this is so amazing.
This is still so that one would be like your favorite to date, maybe?
I'm more of a minimalist. Like my design sense is more,
Okay.
I'm more of a minimalist, and this wall was definitely not that.
Oh, that's
so
funny.
I wouldn't say that I would want that wall in my house, but Joni decided every single thing in the house is white. The couch is white, the walls are white, the floor is
Right.
white. Everything is white on white on white on white. And
We've seen a few of those houses like that.
and the only huge, ginormous pop would be this wall, right, that you walk into.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I mean, this is me. It was a collaborative process. I was able to show them basically the layout and the design. But when we went to actually install this, some of the masks in transit had broken. So I had to, it wasn't exactly what they had approved, but I mean, it didn't matter. She was really extremely happy with it.
So when you're doing a gallery wall for a house, you're selecting the pictures. Are you also then framing them? Because I know you're installing and putting them up, but are you actually then selecting frames and?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a collaborative process. I would suggest certain framing, and I've never gotten pushback. And I explained, like,
Right.
I think this needs to have a pop of color in the mat for these reasons. And, I send pictures from the framer, and they usually go, oh, I didn't think of that. I like to push the boundaries. Mm-hmm. And even when they don't see it, so a lot of people aren't visual.
Oh, a lot of people are not visual. Do you follow a certain process, or do you have a certain philosophy when it comes to gallery walls as far as the sizing of the photos? Or do you change up, or is each one completely curated on their own?
It's completely curated. It depends on what else they have.
But is there a certain philosophy that you adhere to, or like a certain, I don't know, I know when I'm laying art on walls, I lay them on the floor, for example, first. Yeah. And I know a lot of people do templates now, or no.
But you also, you just did one
on 3D.
Where you did it in 3D on CAD and then did a 3D of the wall. So
just
the client
wonder if there's a philosophy that you follow or a rule of thumb.
I design things in Canva.
I love Canva. What a fabulous little addition that is.
So I do when I go to someone's house, or if I'm doing it remotely, I ask them to send me a photo stepping away from the wall so I could see all corners of that wall. Mm-hmm. And then I ask them to measure everything, including the switch. How far
the light
away
switches,
is the switch.
yes.
I need to put that on my Canva, essentially on the canvas.
Correct.
Canva, right?
Yep.
And then once I know what the measurements are, if there's a television, where's that placed? Measure it from this angle and that angle. So I set up all the furniture in Canva, and I usually put a height of a person that is the same height as my client.
Right.
And so that they could see, if they're standing next to that wall, where does everything lie?
Right.
Where does it line
right
up?
perspective.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I could say, is this where your television would be? Because I want to make sure that I did the canvas properly. And once we figure that out, then I put everything on the wall, and then they can. But to answer your question, I like to design a gallery wall first, looking at what they have, and then I can add different things, and work with the sizing and things like that.
Does technology, fall in place with what you do? Is it important?
I say to people, I own an IT company.
What's that?
She says
is that I own an IT company. It's all, I have a 50 terabyte server onto which we scan everything, because we camera scan. The scans are enormous.
Right.
And then, I have another 96 terabyte for all the digital collections that we gather. Because we need a really fast computer and a very, very large hard drive for all those iClouds and Google Photos and
it's
Amazon.
So much information.
There's a technology, and I cannot think of the name of it. It slips my mind right now. In our house, we have a wall of photos. I say the room is the hallway is 20 feet long, 25 feet.
Yeah.
And we probably have 100,
Too many
200
pictures.
pictures, all
Too many.
framed
People
that are
love
on the
it, but
wall.
it's
and
not.
and a few years ago, I kind of, what you just said a few minutes ago about changing things and being sort of stale and stagnant, I started taking the pictures, and I cannot think of the technology of what we were doing, but we were using a company called Erasma. They were bought by HP, and then HP, they kind of gave up on the company and they went away. But I don't know if you've used this kind of technology with any of your clients, that we used the photo as almost like a QR code. So when you took your phone, if you had the software on your phone and you put it on the picture, that picture would then turn to life with a video that matched the picture.
Oh, I had a client who wanted to do this.
I can't think of the name of the technology. It's widely used. The Rolling Stones used it for a concert tour to promote their tour. And I got involved in it because I had a client, Office Depot, and we used it in Office Depot. And I wish I could think of the name of the technology that exists, that you could take a picture and that becomes the sort of the QR code that ignites or starts whatever you want. It could take you to a website. It could take you to what we used in our house is for video. And then my kids took these little crystals and stuck them on all the frames that would come to life. So when friends and relatives and whatnot came to the house, they could take their cell phone out, download the software from Erasma, and watch the picture come to life.
I'm going to write this down. Is it still active?
Oh, well, Erasma is not. It was a wonderful a wonderful platform. Like I said, HP bought them and then they abandoned it like a year or two later. But once I'll remember what the technology is, and I'll let you know.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love to explore that.
Yeah.
And as we're talking about technology, and you mentioned, sometimes your clients are not in the same town or area as you. Do you get your business through word of mouth? Is it through social media, online platform? And like, where do people go to find you?
Well, we're everywhere. We're on all the socials, and of course, we have a website. We have been getting a lot of clients outside of Los Angeles as of late through Google. They just find me on Google.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I just did my own little tweaks on SEO, and I thought, wait, what's happening? This is pretty cool. And, we have clients outside of LA where they fly me to their, which it's actually doesn't take that long. Again, with clients in LA, I usually spend up to 4 hours with them. And so it takes about 2 to 3 days. I fly and then the next day we start assessing and working with, UPS to start boxing their memories to ship back to us. So, so that's always an option.
Are there any challenges in preserving people's memories in the process of what you do?
The challenges are always the tapes. A lot of times they're like, but we don't know what's on this tape. And, the tape could be, well, it's not that. Well, we always get that too.
A few little Pandora boxes getting opened up.
So
there's always a Pandora box. Always.
There's an enormous amount of
there's
an enormous amount of different formats of tape. So
we handle all.
You have all of them.
We handle everything. Everything is handled in-house except for this kind of film, 8mm and 16mm, all that. I just decided not to purchase that equipment because, again, I live in Los Angeles and there are so many amazing vendors that can do a phenomenal job where I don't have to do this.
The experts.
Exactly.
So I'm interested in asking a question. The fact that you do work and you have clients all over the world is, from a standpoint from dealing with people all over the world, do people handle their memories, their photos in different ways in different areas of the world? Or is everyone kind of the same, just in shoe boxes and disorganized with it?
Shoe boxes and disorganized,
is a global solution.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Everybody was very used to, and we are probably of the same generation, and we
Right.
know this to be true. Everyone was used to the analog. They were used to the scrapbooks or the albums. Then
Yes.
it went from sticky to slide-ins.
Yes.
We were just used to all that.
Yes.
And then in 1996, there was an emergence of digital camcorders and cameras,
Yes.
which was intriguing in 1996.
Yeah.
We still had that, but maybe we bought it if we were gadgety.
Right.
And then, but then people didn't know really what to do with the SD cards. And that's the little
I'm one of
card.
those.
That's the
Yep,
little
that
memory
was
card.
me.
Yep.
That was me.
And so I have a client who had, no exaggeration, over 800 SD cards because they didn't know you
What to
could
do with them.
download the information.
That's
and
quite an investment in SD cards.
It's a huge investment.
Yeah.
So then it became, there's a term, it's in 2004, it's called the digital black hole, where so many
I
families
know.
don't have assets from 2000 to 2004. And that was because they just didn't know how to save their digital files. So those files could be sort of squirreled in an old computer, which we can have.
That actually happened to us. We have like a whole year of trips
it's
and
like a
travel
2.5 year period that
where-
everything that disappeared is gone.
Yeah, because people didn't know. They would change computers. They had no idea.
Yeah.
We
It's
entrusted.
so sad.
Well, I'm going to give you one that's even worse. This is putting it on your computer, then your computer dies, and your hard drive dies, and now everything's gone.
Yeah, you definitely need backup for your
Yes.
backup when it comes to photography and memories.
Yeah, and this is why we practice the 3-2-1 backup method for all of our clients.
Tell us about that.
3-2-1 is 3 copies of your data
Okay.
in 2 places,
Okay.
1 offsite. So 3 copies of your data, 2 places could be 2 different clouds or on external hard drive and 1 on the cloud. And then 1 copy offsite. So you get another external hard drive and you put that in the bank or someone else's house.
Right.
Or at the office, if you have access to a different location.
Yep. Makes total sense.
Did you come up with that?
No. The father of metadata, well, we kind of call him that, but Peter Crow is who I'm actually going to be seeing in a couple of weeks when I go to conference. He's the one who sort of came up with the 3-2-1 method.
That's
So is
interesting.
that part of your business plan? Like when somebody hires you, that's all. How does the compensation look? Like what does your agreement strategy look like? How does that? Is there broken up into how many pieces? I mean, it's like kind of for me, every project is a different scope of work. Everybody has different needs.
Every project is different. I like to look at my workflow and our studio and what we offer as 360. It's like really from beginning to end, we have figured it all out for our clients.
Amazing.
So the way we deliver files is that we come up with a platform and I sort of give them a showcase of different platforms that we've created for our clients. And I go through the pros and cons of those platforms with them. And then they choose a platform and then we set that up for them. And then of course they get a couple of thumb drives from us as well, or hard drives, depending on how large the collection is. Mm-hmm. And they can keep 1 in-house and back that up on their computers and keep 1 offsite. So that's in terms of how we price everything. It's really in phases. Although I've gotten pretty good at being able to tell someone their collection is 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, whatever it is. We bring everything in the office and we count everything. And the estimate I provide has the count, and the counts are approximate. I'm not going to sit there and count 80,000 photos.
3 times to make sure it was 80,000.
But there's tactics that we use. For example, 1 inch of photos is approximately 100 photos.
Okay.
1 inch of slides is approximately 20 slides.
So you don't weigh them? Use the weight
No,
principle?
we don't weigh them. No, we don't weigh them. If there are old sort of cabinet cards, the cabinet cards, the thick ones from the late
Yes.
1800s to
Yep.
1910s, those, of course, because they're thicker, it's going to 1 inch of those is going to be less,
Right.
right? It's going to be
Right.
10 approximately. It's around a millimeter or so. So we have tactics, and then for the albums, we sort of do an average of anywhere from 3 to 4, per page. We count the pages and we put that in. It's just all approximate. And then we say, if you scan your entire library, it's going to be this price. But we know it's never going to be that price because we're not going to scan everything. I always recommend, and this floors a lot of people, I say 10 to 20%. And they're
Wow. Wow. Wow.
I mean,
Well,
think
because
about
you're
it.
preserving it. It's different. Like you're preserving, God forbid, and you're preserving it for people to actually be able to use and look at and frequent versus
Exactly.
people aren't going to want to go through that every single time. You actually would, I think a little bit would be more accessible in
Exactly.
general.
Well, and I'm not talking about 10 to 20% from every era. Obviously, if anything is before the 70s, we're going to preserve most of it because people
It's so
were more discerning.
minimal. Yeah, definitely. It was
It's
so
more
minimal.
discerning. In the 70s, people started taking a lot of photos, and then forget about the 80s and 90s because that was when you got one print and then you got like 3 for free. So,
So funny.
yes.
There's so much history just in like this conversation alone of like understanding philosophies, right? I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to understand the mindset.
We mentioned to you before we started the podcast today that, we as a family have been digitizing all of our memories since our first child was born 18 years ago. So every single photo, every single video that we have taken has been put onto a family website. And one thing that we have found because of that, and Tiffany and I talk about this every so often, is that it really brings the family together so much more, because when we have family over or we're just on a Saturday night with our kids and there's not a great movie to watch, let's turn on the photo memories, and we'll sit there for a number of hours going through those photos. And our kids just love it, like going through our wedding photos and so forth and the wedding videos. So there's an emotional aspect to going back and looking at all of that old, those old memories. So you must experience that with clients that you have that are probably very excited once they get everything.
Absolutely. There's never a dry eye in the house when
Yeah.
we're delivering. I mean, it's just my favorite form of memory is slides because no one has seen them for decades.
Right. You're right.
And B, you just won't believe the quality. It's like slides are this magical form of memory that has
Wow.
held its quality since the 40s. I mean, I scanned slides from the 40s and you could see the pores if the camera was a good quality.
You're kidding.
lens.
Wow. The color and everything.
It's just magical. I mean, now having said that, there are a lot of slides that have lost their glory, but our scanning price includes not only the high quality scan, but we of course rotate and crop everything, and of course we rename the file and redate it so that it's searchable and sortable, but we also color correct everything that we scan.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. That's really, because I know even Scott, when he goes through our pictures, and with the kids, if we're traveling, he's always wanting the pictures horizontal, but the kids want vertical because that's what goes on social media or one of those. That's a modern problem.
Right. Well, because we watch them as a family, like I just said, on the big screen TV, and I think that
It's the best.
a picture in in a widescreen format is so much better than looking at it vertical, because from your cell phone you're seeing so much of what the memory is.
It's the best.
Yeah.
We hold such an amazing piece of equipment in our hand.
We do.
so incredible. I mean, I can run my business on this thing.
Right.
And I'm a phenomenal photographer on it. And I'm a great videographer. And I get to, my dad's 97 and I get to put on that recorder so he doesn't become self-conscious. I do audio recording of him where I just kind of slip it right under him as he's telling a story, just so I can have his voice, and it's just, I actually do a lot of workshops on iPhone, on little tips and tricks on iPhones that a lot of people don't know about.
That's cool.
So yeah, sign up on our mailing list and you'll get a note of that. But however, we've lost being intentional photographers.
Agreed. Without a doubt.
We need to be intentional. We need to make sure that camera lens is clean before we take a selfie or a photograph. I get too many photos where everything's blurry because the fingerprints are all over the camera lens, either in the front or in the back. And, we need to be intentional about taking photos. There's a carbon footprint of all the things that we're putting in the cloud, so you don't need to have your photos because this is such a fear. People have squirreled their photos all over. And then they become overwhelmed and they don't know what they have and it's not consolidated. So I teach a lot about intentionalities when it comes to this.
Well, and even with I'm sure as you get more modern clientele, or I should say younger clientele, as your business evolves, like this generation, everything is digital. There's very little that's actually a printed photograph or memory. Do you also include say like a newspaper clipping or anything like that go into the archive as well? We also save every time the kids are in a competition, or if they give at church they'll give a pamphlet out who's singing.
Well, we've taken it from our standpoint as a family to another level. We not only archive every photo, every video, but every award that someone in the family might get. There's a section on our family website for awards. Even their report cards.
I love that.
Even their report cards. I'm digitizing and putting it up there because, in 20 years when our kids have kids, they can go back and with their kids looking at, hey, look, this is what I got as grades in 3rd grade or 6th grade.
Well, and I also found as they need pictures for certain events or certain
things,
it's very easy to go get those pictures of
off the website.
Right.
That's yeah. And to answer your question, yes, to all of that. Awards, old passports.
Oh, that's a good one too.
It's so fun to scan old passports of, grandpa who's been gone since the 90s and we find his passport and it's from the 20s,
Vintage,
or
driver's licenses, all those.
Driver's licenses, but definitely accomplishments are huge. We have a lot of clients whose parents that have passed had enormous accomplishments, and there's a lot of newspaper clippings, and we just did a book of just my client is now 75, and so her dad has been gone for a while, but I just created a book for her of just her father's accomplishments.
So that's amazing. So once you actually go through the cataloging and that curating, you can constantly, I guess, clients can come back to you and be like, oh, can we now do this? And now add on that.
Yeah, we do a lot of year-end books.
Okay.
So for me, that's gold, and my approach to doing celebratory books is a little different. I like for a wedding book, I do like to include the vows. I like to include, if the album pages allow, I'd like to include anything about their engagement, just so it's
that's nice.
the
The process
of their wedding.
Yes.
And then, of course, if they went on a honeymoon, and again, if the book allows, because books only have certain amount of pages, maybe include something that is of the journey of their whole getting married and their union.
Right. So who do you use to do the books? Do you print those in-house, or how does that?
No.
No. Okay.
We use everything I do is through the lens of archival.
Okay.
So we use bookmakers that are only provide archival quality. So
Okay.
when a client asks me to do something in Shutterfly, with all due respect,
Right.
I will say no.
Right. Okay. That's kind of what I was asking in a nice way. Yeah. Makes
Yeah,
sense to me.
and again, no, I mean,
No, I
listen,
get it. I get it.
and Shutterfly, it's great for the consumers. It's wonderful. Like, put your photos in there. I call it the photo jail, because trying to get your photos out of Shutterfly is, you need you need a court order for that. No, I'm just
Right.
kidding.
Well, I'm going to say that that's with a lot of sites, a lot of sharing sites. They either own whatever you put up, or to get your stuff out, it's so difficult.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, Apple makes it really easy. And again, because it's all about privacy for that company. And I hope they never change that policy. Um, Shutterfly is the absolute worst. Google is hard doable.
Yeah.
And Amazon was
I was
really
gonna
easy.
say
And now
Amazon's
it's much
good.
harder
Right.
with Amazon. So, but yeah, I mean, so yes, I only use archival quality, whether it's just getting prints for my clients or doing photo books. We have different tiers for different price levels,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all archival. But the higher tier just allows for a million different iterations.
When you say archival, what do you mean by that? The texture of the
equipment.
paper?
The
Or-
paper is archival quality, meaning it will last. They guarantee, one company guarantees it for up to 100 years, that it won't fade or
Wow.
degrade, and that the glues won't come apart. Because all the covers have glues on them.
Yes.
Right.
So the glues are archival. The print is archival. And I don't think you could do fabric that's archival, but fabric is fabric.
Right.
And most of it is polyester, so it's essentially plastic, so it won't ever degrade.
Wow.
But yeah, and and I like to design, and I do design logos, sort of family logos for the websites that we design, and the same logo goes on all their books,
So
and
it's like family branding.
it is, yeah.
I know. I just saw that recently too. And I read in a magazine of like a couple who had has a second home, and they created a logo and a name for the house, and then a certain colorway, and they used it on everything from their napkins to the bikes they use on that property, their cars. Literally, the logo became such a important facet to the whole.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just so much that can be incorporated with intention, as you mentioned before.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
So where do you see your company in 4 or 5 years from now?
I would like to be able to bestow my knowledge to as
Yes.
many people as possible. That's really my intention, is to teach people the importance of not only saving their memories, but, for me, it's the gateway to our ancestors.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Our
I
history.
mean, our history.
Yeah.
And I know that there is no human alive that is at least my age that hasn't, experienced some level of trauma. And whether that is through the family or through just in the world in general, like, for example, when I was 9 years old, I was in the middle of the Iranian Revolution.
Right.
And
Crazy.
my personal story is that my parents had to flee essentially to this country, and my mom only brought the family photo books. And that's
Right.
how that's another reason why I started this business, is because I started to question, like, who is this person? Oh, it's my dad's uncle who I've only met once, and I kind of sort of remember, but not really. And so it's the gateway through to where I come from and the why. And so I just want people to be inspired. So in 5 years from now, I hope that I can inspire as many people to take their memories more seriously, and taken action towards saving them and preserving them.
Do you think this is something that could be franchised?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think so. Yeah. I feel like just even after today's conversation, sharing information with you, I don't know if you'd even be able to keep up with the intake. I mean, I feel like there's so many busy in this very busy digital, loud, fast world we live in. You know, it's why people hire interior designers. You hire people to do everything. Why not hire somebody to archive, like you said, your history? When you had to flee, what was the most important thing you had, to take? And that was your memories and your history. Yeah. And I just know that there's, like most people start with a shutterfly concept, but very few stick with it as well. It's something that lags tremendously.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you could start with the shutterfly concept and you can certainly continue that, but that's not going to preserve your great grandmother's photos.
Correct.
And her stories,
Correct. So, and merge them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is, again, the 360s, this idea of everything that's important to you, right? Mm-hmm. The report cards, the passports, the old driver's licenses, and then all the children's art. You know,
totally.
That's one of the things that we keep. We scan.
Yeah. It really is such a brilliant business concept.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
It really is.
Is your demographic more of the baby boomer generation that has more? Because it's really is how do we get the message out to the younger generation that's more savvy with digital and should be. But
well, and I actually feel like to add on, piggyback what you were just saying, Scott, like, so for example, my grandmother was sick a few years ago. She's older, lived an amazing life, has amazing history archive. And my aunt took a lot of that and made books that she would keep on the cocktail table. So anytime somebody would go visit my grandmother, spend an hour with her, my girls started to want to go hang out at my grandma's so they could look at those old photos again and see all these old memories and pictures, where this new generation it's all in a phone. It's
all in their phone. It's not shared.
Shared, correct. So there's the whole next generation of your market is really being able to tap into this next group and, frame a freaking picture, put one on the nightstand and hang things on the wall and create these books or things that can be shared.
Mm-hmm. So our clients that are younger, so millennials,
right?
They are overwhelmed by their digital.
Right.
So we get a lot of clients that are like, I have 10,000 photos, but my wife has 300,000 photos. And how do we merge that?
Right.
So, we get more the digital clients of the younger generation. And then the baby boomers have the more, they are the generation who are now empty nesters. And they're like, okay,
what do we do with all this?
I'm retired. I can pay attention to this.
Right.
And then we get clients that are in the sandwich generation where they're like, I'm really overwhelmed. My mom just died and I have teenagers and I don't know what to do here.
Right. 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 Well, the good news is that your business is here to help all that and facilitate that. And I would think that this has so much growth potential.
So people who are listening and watching to this podcast, how do they find you?
You can find us, of course, on our website. It's picturely.com, Picturli, no E with an I. I know it's spelled a little weird. I also own pictureli.com, so if you just go on there, it'll put you right to my website. We're on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm starting to post some content to YouTube. And of course, on our website, you can sign up for a newsletter where, I do the newsletters, so I write information that I think is helpful for people to be inspired by. And of course, we will talk about some workshops that are coming up as well.
Really, really amazing. Really wonderful conversation today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate you joining us.
Yes. I appreciate you having me. It's been wonderful talking to you.
I look forward to keeping up this conversation too in the future.
And we will, definitely.
Wonderful.
Yeah, we have a few ideas that we want to run by you.
Oh, amazing.
Yes. So we'll be in touch.
Amazing. It's so validating when someone really understands like every level of detail that has gone into my thought process, because a lot of people are like, I just don't know how this works. And to their, and honestly, it makes sense that they don't know because it's so overwhelming. It's like, how are you going to take all this and make it look like what you're showing me?
And I think like in what my business is too, it's something people think, oh, I can do myself. I can do it myself.
No.
I don't need to hire, where you realize you're limiting yourself. If you can bring an expert in that genre into the fold, I mean, just think of how much better the end result will be.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we appreciate you joining us today. And
Thank you.
We'll stay in touch.
Yes.
Definitely. Thank you so
much.
Bye-bye.
It was a pleasure.
iDesign Labs podcast is an SW Group production in association with the 5-Star and TW Interiors. To learn more about iDesign Lab or TW Interiors, please visit twinteriors.com.